everyone, and welcome to Association Rockstars, where we hear about the journey and insights of some amazing association executives and partners who are building the association industry of tomorrow. I'm your host, Lowell Aplebaum, CEO and Strategy Catalyst at Vista Cova. I'm partnering with organizations on strategy facilitation. And with me today, I'm happy to have Michelle Mills Clement, FASAE, CAE, RCE, CEO of the Chicago Association of Realtors, acronym extraordinaire. As we jump in, we'll hear more about Michelle. Michelle, we're so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Lowell. Appreciate it.
So we like to start that we think that as we're highlighting rock stars, that everybody has superpowers. Talk with my kids about it all the time. These things, these skill sets we have that make us superhuman in the jobs we do and the careers that we path in front of us. And so I'm curious, as you think about it, perhaps what one of your superpowers are.
I think my superpower is the ability to connect with people. And I say that because I think I know how to, I don't want to say read where people are, but I feel like I can read their mind. Not all the time. Sometimes I feel like I have a pretty good intuition of what's going on around me and people. And that's something that I've just kind of innately had for some time. Doing a little bit of work in politics, I think it's necessary. You kind of watch people's angles are. Yeah. And then associations, I mean, that's key. You know, you're interacting with members, you're interacting with staff, you're interacting with colleagues. And so just really understanding where people are and being able to connect with them where they are has been a superpower of mine. I think I can find some commonality with anybody from, you know, our security guard who's here to some of the cleaning staff, all the way up to, you know, the national CEO. So I think I really can connect that way.
Do you find that you've had experiences along your association journey that have heightened that power, that, you know, that you have found refined because of the volunteers you've worked with or the staff that you've had to work with?
Yeah, I think I came from, so I started as a senior manager before, that's a job right before I moved into the C-suite. Yeah. And so I think because I wasn't that far removed from some of that mid-management level, that has peaked it. So when I sit in this role as a CEO, I feel as though I can understand where some of the staff are that might be in that mid-career or even that entry-level career, because it wasn't that long ago that I was there. And I remember what I wanted and what I was thinking. And so when I interact with, you know, the team, that's kind of where my mindset goes. From a volunteer side, I've been a member of associations, and I remember, you know what I mean, wanting to get involved. So when I see that new member, I have that same kind of sense of what's your involvement level. You're probably a little uncomfortable because you haven't been here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Members. So I think I try to disconnect personally.
I like from that reflection, your own sort of association path and journey. You know, as you think about that journey that you've had, was there a point where this became something that was a job and just an organization to you actually realizing that you'd like found a good fit or your professional home?
Yeah, I remember it clearly. I was working for Smith Buckland, which is an association management company here in Chicago. And I had started working for them. My previous role was with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I got into a car accident, and so I wasn't able to be as mobile and out in the field. I was doing fundraising work. So I had to find something that was stationary. And so I fell back on my communications degree and was just looking for marketing jobs. And I ended up getting an interview at Smith Buckland. I didn't understand that it was an association management company. I didn't even understand what association was. I just knew I was working in nonprofits. I worked for the Boy Scouts and, you know, muscular dystrophy. So I just kind of went that route. And it wasn't until the interview when I started to understand, okay, this is an organization with a bunch of nonprofits. Okay, makes sense a little bit. So I did that for a while. And I remember going into the office every day, and it's in a big, you know, downtown Chicago office building at the time, 401 North Michigan. And they had the placard outside the elevator banks that said, you know, Smith Buckland. So you knew that that was their side of the elevator.
Sure.
But it said where associations grow. And I remember I kept seeing that every day, walking in. And it was one day it just kind of clicked. Like, we are the ones that help these associations essentially grow and do better and perform. And it was all about excellence, like delivering the best service possible. And that's when I think for me, it started to click. Like I am really impacting how an organization grows. And as a result, how that industry grows. And as a result, how that member grows. And so it just, every time I would see that sign going into the
Yeah.
elevators, it just clicked more and more. And then that's when I really made that commitment to say, you know what, let me figure out what this is first and foremost and dive all in. So that's when I noticed it for myself.
It'd be great if we can get little placards like that and send it to all the mid-level managers or
Yeah.
associates or those coming in that don't realize it yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, do you feel like there's anything that we could be doing to help those that are within our field that don't yet recognize they're actually on a professional journey, like that they are an association professional, without us installing placards at elevator banks throughout the
Right.
country for if we have live offices? Well, how do you think we raise the profile of the association industry itself so people realize they're on the journey?
I think it's the responsibility of those of us that do understand it. I speak largely about my involvement with ASAE, with Association Forum, and about associations in general. With the staff team here at Chicago Association of Realtors, at my previous role with the Commercial Brokers Association, nobody was a member of ASAE, nobody had a CAE, nobody really understood association work. Especially on the West Coast, the industry you worked in or the industry the association represented, that's the industry you were in. So everybody came into it like, I work in real estate. Even when I was interviewing, the search committee is like, what's this association stuff? You work for a real estate association. So having that dialogue was important. So I talked to the staff about, this is what association management is. You don't work in real estate, sort of, but you really, this is your career path, and you can go to any other association in any other industry and likely do just as well. So I started talking more about that. We got a membership with ASAE, got more people involved, talked a lot about the CAE, started to make it a professional development goal for some of the staff team that had been doing this for decades and didn't realize what they were doing. And then at CAR, we've done the same thing. Like we have a full ASAE membership, we have Association Forum membership. I'm the only one that came in with the CAE, and now Zach Walquist is here and he has his CAE and he's promoting it. So it's not just me, beating this drum. So now we have people that are interested in becoming CAEs and are actively working towards it, have applied and are going forward, with the process because now they get it. So I think it's our responsibility to promote, this is a career choice for you. This is a path. You can really do, go far with this role. And so I think if we don't put that message or that bug in the ear or plant the seed, it'll continue to just be something people roll into and don't realize they're doing.
Well, I think definitely the journey to getting your CAE, you learn so much along the way, and the people that you meet, you have like study buddies along the way as well. It gives you a different insight of the community. I know besides CAE, you have other letters after your name too. Tell us, the path, the journey, what it means to be a fellow of ASAE. I know that's a unique dynamic as well, a unique perspective, because there aren't that many.
Right.
What has that meant for you as like your path of association involvement and belonging?
That's really been the highlight for me of my association belonging. A lot of people I looked up to in the industry were fellows. I've seen them, and from afar, it seemed like, oh, there's the fellows, and you'd see them, the new class get announced on stage. And it never really was something that I thought I would be doing anytime soon.
Yeah.
It was something that I kind of was like, oh, that's aspirational down the road, and didn't really think too much of it. But then, I got nominated, and it was one of those things where I said, I wonder if I'm ready for this, if I've done enough for this. And it was really that moment when I did receive the call that I was selected, that it just felt amazing. It just so amazing and just such a highlight to be recognized in the field. I've gotten like so many like thank you cards and posts, and I haven't even probably gotten to everybody. So if you're here listening, thank you. But that was just such an honor, really, just an honor to share those letters with other individuals. And then when I started to meet the other fellows, I realized this is a whole other, group of individuals that I probably otherwise wouldn't have really had too much involvement with outside of
Yeah.
maybe passing in the halls at a convention. And now I was able to sit down and have good dialogues with them, share a drink, share lunch. And that was moving for me because I was able to share my experience, what life is like for me personally, and then hear the same from somebody else. So it's really opened up, my cohort of people that I can reach out to now. And one of those unexpected, pluses to the whole thing. But it's been such an honor, and I still feel humbled really by the whole process.
So it's a very well-deserved designation and honor for you.
Thank you.
What occurs to me in how you're describing it, right, is that part of being a rock star is also surrounding yourself with those that also are making significant efforts on behalf of the industry, right? These are the
Yes.
colleagues and those that you're striving alongside. How, as you think about like these many different communities you're a part of that you even just named, Association Forum, ASAE, the Fellows, uh, how have you in your path like sought the communities of those that are going to both challenge and inspire and push you to do more?
I'm lucky in that I didn't really seek it initially. I've learned later, now that I'm a little bit further in my career, that I need to seek very specific circles to push myself. But earlier, it was about just wanting to belong, so I was a member of Association Forum. I wanted to get involved. I wanted to belong, so I would join a SIG, I would volunteer. And then, ASAE, I want to be involved. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
to the meetings. And then I remember when I decided to apply for DELP and Diversity Executive Leadership Program, that was along the lines, it's probably the first time I thought about, building a network. I was working for Association Forum, and so I had the Chicago Association community pretty locked down. Like I knew everybody, I knew every association, but I didn't know people outside of Chicago, and I knew the industry was bigger than that. And so when I applied to DELP, that's kind of what I was looking for. And that community was more than I could have ever imagined. They really harness you in, and it became that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Because I had been in a situation, I think many, people of color are, when you're the only one in the room. And this is a time when I wasn't, and I was one of many.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to say a lot. A lot of people understood where certain, biases we had experienced were there, and we didn't have to break it down. People knew it. And so that felt so just invigorating to be around. And then what happened was there were other people I got to meet. A lot of people in my class that, again, probably wouldn't have met. And it gave me a different perspective for the I can't talk today, Q community, because there were so many similarities and parallels that I just kind of brushed to the side as a minority, as a person of color.
Yeah.
And then having the interactions, it really brought it to light for me. And that's something that I think I would not have had as deep an understanding if it wasn't for DELP. And it brought it beyond, associations. It made it personal.
Finding once you get to know a community, once you feel you're a part of a community, you walk in, it's kind of like everyone knows your name.
Mm-hmm.
I always find it interesting when I walk into a community where that isn't the case, where all of a sudden I don't know everyone I'm seeing, right? It's like, oh yeah, like this happened once upon a time. Like I've met people beyond then.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've played a little game of like, okay, how do I get to know people in this community and try different ways of like who's like tweeting on social media or like who's like in the program guide.
Mm-hmm.
When you're walking into a new community with all these different organizations, how do you approach starting to get to know others that are there that you may not know?
So when we moved to Seattle, my family and I uprooted from Chicago to Seattle. Anybody that knows me knows I left kicking and screaming. I did not want to leave Chicago. I never intended to leave Chicago, let alone go to Seattle. Like I had no idea where it even was, to be frank. But that has kind of been my lesson. We moved to Seattle. We didn't know anybody. We had no family, no friends, nothing. And it was almost like you were dating friends, trying to find some people and connections. And we ended up joining a meetup group. And that's kind of how we went to one event. Nobody showed up, but one person ended up hitting it off with that person. His wife came, hit it off with her. Next thing you know, they're at our wedding. So it can work. But what it kind of taught me was that, it's okay to be direct and say, hey, I don't have any friends who just moved here. Do you want to be my friend? Check yes or
Right.
no. But I've started to do that in these communities that I'm in now. When I walk in a room, there's people I don't know. It's no longer weird just to walk up and say, hey, I'm Michelle. I'm the CEO of Chicago Association of Realtors. And what do you do? Oh, I would love to get together for coffee, or can I get your card or whatever, and reach back out and connect with people. I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have had that comfort level if I hadn't had to date friends as an adult when we were in Seattle.
I appreciate you swiping left on being on
Yeah,
this
I was
conversation, I
before that.
guess.
I don't know about the swiping. I don't know about.
I don't know which way to swipe either, so that's all right. But whichever it was, I'm happy that you did.
Yeah.
But what you're identifying is really, I think, a leadership quality, right? Of being willing to put yourself forward and welcome others.
Mm-hmm.
And as you think about our community, if you think about our profession, anything else as you think about the future, that those that are aspiring to be a rock star someday, to have these communities, that in terms of developing leadership qualities, what do you think is needed for the leaders of our community for tomorrow?
I'm really believing in authenticity. I think there was a time when you came up and you couldn't bring, your home self to work, and you had to be very polished, and you couldn't, show too much emotion. You couldn't be vulnerable. And even when I went into my first CEO role, I had some people coach me more or less to pull back a little bit. You know what I mean? That to keep that hierarchical, you're at the top, and you're
Yeah.
at the bottom approach. And I just went against that because my gut just didn't feel it. I remember not liking that when I was, in those other positions. And so that has actually been successful for me, connecting with teams, with volunteers, with members, just across the board. And I think any leader coming in, I'm not saying you got to come in and, lay everything on the table, but there is some level of vulnerability, authenticity, and empathy that you need to bring and to connect with people that you're interacting with, in order for them to trust you, you know what I mean, and then B, for them to really believe, okay, you can lead this organization, or you can lead this association, whatever it is, with your whole heart, and be present, and it isn't just a paycheck for you.
I like the balance of the vulnerability and empathy that leads to a professional intimacy of connection.
Yes.
I mean, that's how you start in terms of how you relate to your members and the positions you've pursued. Time's getting short, so just one or two things I want to ask, which is, you're part of all these different communities now, and certainly you see those coming up behind you. Do you think about any diamonds in the rough that you've seen, right? Those that you're like, yeah, you're going to be a fellow someday, or yes, you should be part of Delphi, or yes, you should be in the leadership. Anything when you meet someone, you're like, oh, this is someone who has the path to walk, that stands out to you as an indicator, what is a quality of these future diamonds in the rough association rock stars in the making that jumps out at you?
It's usually just that it's just that it factor.
Yeah.
Somebody just has that it factor, and it's not that they can command a room, or they did this or that. It's just something about them. And that's where I go back to that superpower, what I mean? Something that I just hone in on, there's something about you, and you're going to be great. You're going to shine. And I think back to, if people didn't look at me and push me out there and put me in positions which I was terrified to do, I never would be where I am today. So when I see other people that have that need that little push, I'll push. I won't push you off the ledge, but I'll push, because I think it's just something there. And it. It's just like some politicians and some celebrities and people that, they're going to be faint. You can just tell there's just something there, and it's not a specific trait. It's not their great public speaker and they speak so well. It's none of that. It's just that it factor.
Yeah. So I think as our time comes to a close, I would just ask one last thing, which is, as you think about our other Rockstar colleagues out there, any kind of final closing thought or a guiding thought that helps you stay to your true north, as you continue to demonstrate leadership and authenticity in our industry, that others should think about along their own journey as well?
I think knowing your own personal values. Um, know what is important to you and what you won't compromise on. And that will overlap in your work and your association work, some way, shape, or form. You'll be faced with a situation which may compromise that. And it doesn't mean that you have to go full throttle against it, but how you respond to it, I think is important. But you have to be solid in your personal values and solid in your personal beliefs before you get into a situation where you have to choose which direction do I want to go. And I think for me, my current role here with the Chicago Realtors, there is a very hairy past that this association has in racial segregation in the city. And that is not a value of mine. I was a product of that. It's not something that I would openly run to, but because I knew what my values were, and because I knew how much I valued diversity, how much I value equity, that if I came into this role, I can be honest and vulnerable and, sincere about that. And if I got that back in return, I could take this role and be confident that we can make some changes here. And that's what we've been doing. And so because I had those values going into it, I was able to not walk away from an opportunity. And I was also able to embrace an opportunity that I truly believe only I could have come in and really addressed it the way I've been able to at this time.
Well, certainly your values come out in not just your actions, but also how you speak about your philosophy and your approach. And as one of the rock stars of our industry, I appreciate you sharing some of those thoughts with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Lowell. Appreciate being asked.
I want to also just give a quick shout out to Amy Hager, who's been engaging with you all in the comments and helping to produce Association Rockstars. And then most of all, thanks to everyone who's listening to this and for joining us. And feel free to post any questions or ideas in the comments. We'll continue to build successes going forward. Until next time, Association Rock On.